Hey there, Geunwoo. It's Andrew again. I'm actually quite looking forward to correcting your work today because I've just completed the work of two other students that are, well, far behind you, let's say. And it feels quite a relief to be looking at sentences that make sense. So let's go. So the two things I would include in this sentence: the fact that it's new and used cars, and the fact that it's UK towns, and the fact that it's provided by the Home Valley Car Group. So the bar chart demonstrates the number of new and used cars sold in 7 different UK towns in 2013 by the Home Valley Car Group, or according to the Home Valley Car Group. Overall, while the number of used car sales significantly outperformed those of new vehicles in the majority of towns, there was only a minimal sales gap in Longley Farm. I would say here that it is still all over the towns. While the number of used car sales significantly outperformed those of new vehicles in all towns mentioned, there was only a minimal sales gap in Longley Farm. I like the use of sales gap. Minimal sales gap. Good. In terms of used car sales, people in Home Firth, let's not talk about how big a fan people are of stuff. In these task ones, we want to stay as detached and objective and literal as possible. And that means not using descriptive language, not using metaphor, not using imagery. Talking about the data and only the data. So we cannot draw any conclusions about human behavior or about human perceptions or human opinions from this data. All we can see is how many new cars were sold and how many used cars were sold in 1 year in 7 villages. So we could say, in terms of used car sales, Home Firth experienced the largest number of sales. Actually, I would just say in terms of used car sales, Home Firth, or the most were sold in Home Firth with 650. Or we could just start with the largest number of used cars were sold in Home Firth at 650, closely followed by Meltham with a sales record of 611, or with a second-hand car sales record of 611. We could say Netherton, on the other hand, sold only 120 used vehicles in that year. So what I would say here is, instead of separating it into just new cars and used cars, I would separate it into the data groups. This is for like a level 8 answer, let's say. I would talk about the groups that sold the most. So Meltham, Home Firth and Upper Thong. Because like you've said, the new cars outsold used cars. Sorry, used cars outsold new cars in every single village. So there really is nothing more to comment on with that. What I would then do is talk about the highest performing sales teams and the lowest performing sales teams and the guys in the middle over here. So I would say we have 2 paragraphs here with talking about these guys, that the highest number of cars sold overall was achieved in Home Firth, closely followed by Meltham and then by Upper Thong. Obviously we would support those statements with data, so the highest number of cars sold was in Home Firth, or we could even say the highest number of new and used cars was sold in Home Firth, with 544 and 650 respectively. Closely followed by Meltham, with a respective 455 and 611, with Upperthong let's say selling a similar number of cars with 422 and 501 respectively. Then we could talk about how there are 3 villages that sold the least number of cars, but we could change up our grammar slightly, and we could say, oh, actually, there's an opportunity for a comparison here that's relevant. Because the sales gap here is so small, Netherthong actually outperforms Longley Farm on second-hand cars, but Longley Farm outperforms Netherthong on new cars. This is the only time this happens. With all of the other groups, oh no, wait. No, that still outperforms that. Yeah, this is the only case in which this happens. So we could here say something like, let's say, the villages which sold the least number of cars were Netherton, Netherthong and Longley Farm, with 95, 177 and 220 and 212 new cars sold respectively. However, sales of used cars in Netherthong exceeded those of Longley Farm. Or we could use outperformed instead. So this method here, where you've given that the description, the overall statement, and then the new cars, used cars, that is sufficient for a band 7. But if you want to score a band 8 or 9, you would have to start making comparisons about the data, as well as grouping the data by the most notable features. So the most notable features for me are the fact that these guys are the high performers, these guys are the low performers, and this guy is the median performer. The median in data means the middle number. So we have 3 at the top, 3 at the bottom, and 1 in the middle. So Slowett is the median, has the median sales numbers. Again, as well, not surprisingly, something we must stay away from terms like surprisingly or interestingly or remarkably, because these are matters of opinion. And like I said, we're talking about the data objectively, and we need to keep our opinion well away from these tasks. So don't panic at the fact that I went into great amounts of detail in this graph. That is, like I said, for 8 or 9. Your response is sufficient for a 7 in task and achievement. What I would do is, though, you must remove these matters of opinion. Whenever you're writing something in a task 1 about data, just think, is that proven in the graph, or am I adding that from my brain? Because if it's from your brain, put it in the bin. So, pollution time. So we're discussing problems and solutions for pollution. So I shouldn't have to tell you that we should go introduction, problems, solution, conclusion. So I would say so you've done a good job in expressing well, everything really, but it is hard not to admit. I think that's a bit informal, it's not quite appropriate. So I would just say Pollution is becoming an increasing problem in major cities around the world. I strongly believe that the increasing number of cars and industrial zones is at fault, or is a major cause of this increasing pollution. However, this issue could be effectively resolved if governments establish better public transportation systems, as well as impose taxes on industries that manufacture environmentally harmful materials, or materials harmful to the environment. Either's good. So I'd rephrase that first sentence, but other than that, good intro. So here, I would make sure to introduce the word congestion in this part. So to begin with, larger cities have more cars on the roads due to higher population levels. Consequently, congestion is increased, as are emissions, which are known to be environmentally hazardous materials. And then we should use an example here, I think. The most dramatic example is Beijing and the smog, or Shanghai. Either is good, but I mean, even in Shenzhen, you've got like loads of it. You've got huge industry, but because it's close to the sea, it all just kind of blows away. So I would use Beijing and the smog that is prevalent there. Whenever you're talking about cities, you know, if you're taking IELTS, you must be kind of a globalist. So you must have ideas about cities that you can refer to. And when we're talking about pollution, smog, I think Beijing is the greatest example there can be, because it's very visual. You're not relying on statistics or experience. You can just be like, hey look, you know Beijing, it's filthy. And I would use further. Further, industrial areas are inevitably built in proximity to major cities as it makes economic and logistical sense. And then we should say something like, this density of industry and traffic significantly deteriorates the surrounding environment. And then I would condense these sentences together. So I'd say, regarding solutions, governments could establish effective public transportations in urban areas. This could motivate people to, to take more buses let's say this could encourage people to prioritize buses, subways and trains over private vehicles. Secondly, governments could impose a tax regime, because we've got secondly there, we don't need also as well, because this is saying, and further, additionally, Secondly, governments could impose a tax regime in which environmentally friendly manufacturers are rewarded with lower taxes. A tax cut, you can't refer to it like in this way. A tax cut, you could say, in which governments provide tax cuts to environmentally friendly manufacturers. Tax cuts would be a great collocation to use, actually. Thus, government policy plays a key role in minimizing pollution levels. To conclude, while larger cities have become seriously polluted due to excessive numbers of cars, together with too many manufacturers, should be an extra R here, governments could resolve this issue by setting up better public transportation systems, as well as an effective tax strategy. There we go. I know it sounds like, again, I corrected quite a lot there, but I would like to see you scoring an 8 in the exam. So I'm trying to give you as many suggestions for new phrasings as possible. Using my examples, I want you to get a good idea of what's required of you in the exam, the sort of style and precision that you're going to be expected to produce. If you need any further assistance, do give me a shout. I tell you what I'll do, actually. I recently wrote 2 answers to IELTS essays. I will share them with you from my Google Drive, along with when I send you this. God, you can tell I've corrected like 15 essays today, can't you? I can barely think. Right, I'm going to leave you to it. I'll send this over to you now. Have a beautiful day, and speak to you soon.